It was Thanksgiving Day, November 25, 2010, in Morenci, Michigan, a quiet, working-class town nestled near the Ohio border. The air was cold. Families across the state were gathered around tables, carving turkeys, sipping cider, and giving thanks. For Tanya Zuvers, it was a day she'd been dreading. Her 3 sons, Andrew 9, Alexander 7, and Tanner 5, were spending the holiday with their father, John Skelton. On paper, this wasn't unusual. But behind the scenes, the situation was tense, fragile at best. Tanya and John's marriage had fallen apart months earlier. After nearly a decade of being together, Tanya filed for divorce in September of that year. There had been warning signs. According to Tanya, John had become emotionally unstable, erratic in both his behavior and mood. She said he had difficulty holding a job and would often disappear for days without notice. Their once ordinary marriage had decayed into bitterness, mistrust, and ultimately fear. The final breaking point came when John took the boys and drove them across state lines to Florida without permission. Tanya was forced to contact authorities to bring them back. After that, the court ordered John to have supervised visitation only. No overnights, no unsupervised custody. And yet, in a moment of compassion, or perhaps misplaced hope, Tanya allowed the boys to stay overnight with him for Thanksgiving. It was the holidays, after all. And John had promised to return them first thing Friday morning. But Friday came, and the boys didn't. Tanya called John's phone early that morning. No answer. She waited, trying to convince herself he was just running late. She called again. Still no answer. As the hours passed, her concern turned to dread. She drove to his home in Morenci. The house was strangely quiet. The boys were not playing in the yard. Their bikes sat untouched. Tanya knocked. No answer. She banged on the door. Eventually, someone opened it. John Skelton himself. He was disheveled, pale, injured. What she saw in that moment was burned into her forever. John was limping, struggling to walk, claiming he had tried to hang himself. Inside there was no sign of the boys, no toys scattered, no jackets by the door. Nothing. Tanya panicked. She demanded to know where her children were. John only muttered something vague about them being safe. Tanya called the police. From there, things escalated rapidly. Morenci police arrived and questioned John. He was evasive. He told officers he'd given the boys to a woman named Joann Taylor, someone he claimed worked for a mysterious group that helps children escape abusive homes. He said Tanya was abusing them. Authorities found no evidence of this. In fact, Tanya had no criminal record, no complaints, no known issues with CPS. Police pressed him. Who is Joann Taylor? Where does she live? How did you contact her? The answer: she didn't exist. There were no witnesses, no phone records, no surveillance. No one had seen the boys leave the house. No trace of Joann Taylor could be found in any child welfare network, church group, or underground organization. In later interviews, John contradicted himself repeatedly, changing his story from Joann to someone else, and finally to a vague claim that he handed them off to a group that lived off the grid, possibly Amish, to protect them from their mother. But the more John talked, the more investigators were convinced of one thing. He was lying. Search efforts began immediately. Over the next several days, local authorities, the FBI, and hundreds of volunteers fanned out across Michigan and Ohio. They searched cornfields, woods, abandoned houses, shallow rivers, and drainage ditches. Helicopters flew overhead. Bloodhounds tracked scent trails that led to nowhere. Dive teams dragged ponds. But there was no sign of Andrew, Alexander, or Tanner. It was as if they had vanished from the earth. Meanwhile, a disturbing picture of John Skelton began to emerge. On his home computer, investigators found dark and horrifying searches. How to break a neck. how to poison someone with cyanide, suffocation techniques. These searches were made just days before the boys went missing. At the very least, they confirmed his mental state was deteriorating. At worst, they were a blueprint for murder. Still, no physical evidence of a crime could be found. No blood, no bodies, no murder weapon. Just a trail of erratic behavior, lies, and silence. In 2011, John Skelton was charged, not with murder, but with unlawful imprisonment. He pled no contest and was sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. During the trial, prosecutors made it clear they believed he had killed his sons. But without bodies or eyewitnesses, the charge couldn't stick. And so, John sat in prison, serving time not for taking his sons' lives, but for hiding them. Tanya Zuvers never gave up hope. Every Thanksgiving, she released statements. She kept their bedrooms exactly as they were. She shared their photos with news outlets, hoping someone might recognize them. In 2020, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released age progression photos, showing what the boys might look like now as teenagers. The images went viral, but the tips that followed led to more dead ends. Years passed. Bones were found in Montana. People claimed sightings at rest stops. John received letters in prison asking him to tell the truth, but he never responded. In interview after interview, he maintained that the boys were alive, just somewhere else. He refused to say more. Finally, in March 2025, a judge in Lenawee County, Michigan, officially declared the Skelton brothers legally dead. Their date of death was listed as November 26, 2015, 5 years to the day after they disappeared. For Tanya, it was a bitter relief. She called it the worst kind of closure, a recognition that the law now matched what she'd felt in her heart for over a decade. John Skelton remains incarcerated, but his earliest release date is November 2025. He has shown no remorse, he has never confessed, and unless new evidence emerges, he may walk free, never having faced the consequences for what many believe was the ultimate act of revenge, a father destroying his children to hurt the woman who left him. And so, the case of the Skelton brothers remains open, a hole in the heart of a grieving mother. A chilling void in a town that still remembers the sound of their laughter. 3 boys vanished without a trace. No footprints, no graves, just questions. Where are Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton? And will the truth ever be found, or buried forever in silence?